Hey guys, we're back with another video here. This time we're talking about tanking and how best to tank in Enlisted. I'm going to break this video down into three main parts. The first part being the basics of tanking, driving around, shooting, how to control the tank. And we're going to talk about tank versus tank combat and the strengths of each tanks and where to shoot. And finally, we're going to talk about tanks versus infantry and how best to engage lots and lots of infantry when you're in tanks. I remember, guys, all the gameplay you're seeing here is live streamed over at twitch.tv/HeyQuadro. So I do appreciate if you go over there and come hang out sometime. Without further ado, let's jump into the guide. All right, guys, so here we are in our tank. This is a Sherman. I don't expect most of you guys to have the Sherman unlocked, but that's fine. This is just the basics, and these apply to any tank in the game. So we can see, obviously, we start out in the gunner seat. And we're just going to be driving around. I try to stay on the roads because it will make you go faster. Okay, this got our friendly steward here is trying to go around me. Yeah, let him go by. Let faster tanks just go by you. Now you can see on the left there, we have, I'm not sure what he's, all right, see, bye friend. All right, so we have 5 crewmen, right? We have our gunner, our driver, commander, loader, and radio man. So as far as I'm aware, the radio man doesn't matter and the loader doesn't matter either. They're just extra seats that exist. You don't need the loader to load or anything like that. So your gunner, driver, and commander are important, and you can switch between them. So if I press 2, I will switch to the driver, and I have a different little viewport here. There's not really any reason to be the driver over the gunner because you can just drive as the gunner. So that's where you should be 90% of the times in the gunner seat. One thing you can do, like you saw me do just a second ago, is you can get on top, and if you have certain tanks, you can actually switch to the top gun here. And you also get a much better view, so you're able to kind of more easily see around, spot enemy tanks, spot any enemy infantry, but you're also exposed, so enemies can just kind of shoot you in the face, which is obviously bad. So if you're just driving around, try to, you know, be up here, but, you know, once you start taking some fire, get down, because it's not worth dying, right? I'm kind of getting some shots, so I'm just going to swap off. Now, we can just unload on this infantry here. And what I'm going to kind of do in Conquest is just kind of drive between the points, right? I'm going to look for enemy tanks. I'm going to try to be as aware as possible of, you know, enemy planes, which could just smack us. There's really not anything we can do against enemy planes. And that guy actually is like he's coming in. Oh, it looks like he just finished his bombing run. But enemy tanks are really what we're looking for here. We want to support our infantry by killing the enemy tanks as best we can. I think we've taken down most enemy tanks at this point. So after enemy tanks, we're just going to be looking for groups of infantry, like these guys right here. I see a lot of infantry, so I'm going to press R. I'm going to switch down the bottom right. You can see I switched from AP to HE. I'm going to fire off my AP shell that was loaded, and then I'm going to load up my HE. You can see now I'm a lot better at killing infantry. Now there is a mark over here, which kind of scares me. It could be anything. It could be an enemy tank. Any marks I just assume are tanks, even if they're not the little tank bonus mark. And my gun's kind of overheating, so I'm gonna get up on the top gun because these guys are really far away. Looks like I just took a shell from something. Not really sure. I'm just gonna back up. Yeah, I'm gonna hit my enemy tank. Oh, he's right there. There he is. I have HE loaded, but I'm gonna smack him anyway because HE can. My gun is so big that HE can really just do so much damage to something like a Puma since they're so lightly armored. And again, we'll talk about that later. But you can see how the Puma wasn't able to penetrate my front armor because the front armor of the Sherman is so thick. And that's really important because I made sure that if I was going to engage the enemy tank, if a tank rolled up from where the enemy spawn is, they were going to be shooting my front armor, which is where I want them to be shooting because that's my most heavily armored position. Right? I don't want to get flanked. I don't want to get shot in the side because the side they're going to penetrate. The back they're definitely going to penetrate. And the other thing you can kind of do is you can angle your armor. So you can see my tank on the left there. You can see how it's angled. And if that you know Puma was like a bigger tank or something, I could have like armored or I could have angled myself maybe like this. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh, very good. If I angle myself something like this, it makes the angle that the Puma's shooting me much worse for it. Because you always want the degree to be as close to 0 as possible, as perpendicular as possible, because that way the shell won't bounce, right? So you're gonna have a lot better chance of surviving. Now they're throwing some explosive packs at me. I don't know where. Oh, there he is. Just always be careful of infantry. You never want to be caught out alone, because once you get caught out, you're going to be a lot worse off. And again, like I was talking about before, play to the strengths of your tank. The Sherman's a big, beefy tank. It wants to be in the middle of the road. It wants to be in the middle of the action, right? A Stuart, see how this guy's kind of sitting off in the field? He's just trying to find some enemies, and he's kind of using me as like a meat shield. That's exactly what you want to do in the Stuart. Looks like something's over here. You guys can kind of see what I'm doing here is I'm not being too aggressive. I'm staying in open areas where infantry is not going to be able to flank really easily. I'm not going to get caught out. You know, oh, there's some infantry over here. I'm going to go ahead and sit down, load HE, kind of spray. Maybe I get some kills. It's going to take a long time to get used to the traversal of the tank gun. Very awkward. Takes a bit. When you're firing your HE, make sure you're trying to bounce it off walls and stuff. Not firing at the actual guys, because if you fire at the actual soldier themselves like I just did there, it won't actually penetrate. I'm sorry, it won't explode as well. You really want to be firing at the ground or like a wall. You know, see how much bigger of an explosion that is? Much more effective to be shooting at like a big wall than it is to be firing at, you know, something else. Now that's an AT gun. I'm gonna fire this AT and hope I blow it up. I did. Got a bunch of kills there. Fantastic. That guy just whiffed really hard. I should really be dead there. I wasn't paying enough attention. We got some marks over there. I think we're good. Always keep an eye out for AT guns. AT guns are horrifying. The best way to deal with an AT gun is just blitz past it. If you can get past it, it's not going to be able to do anything. And you can see, like, tanks are just really good at holding down areas, right? You're not going to have as much kills as infantry for the most part, but you are going to be really effective at just blasting anything and everything that moves, right? Like, think about how hard it is. You know, they can't really get past here, and we're just triple capped. Now, we've got this whole area locked down, and we're able to just really support our troops as best we can here. There's actually a guy bandaging. So you guys can just see this is really what you want to be doing with tanks. Just stay out in the open, you know, at least if you're in a big tank. Smaller tanks, you can get away with flanking. You know, maybe in a smaller tank like a Puma, a little bit faster, or a Stuart, you want to be flanking around. I don't know how that shot went all the way up there. That was kind of crazy. We were just going to be firing at these guys. See, I'm trying to aim more at the ground. If you can see here, I'm aiming a little bit lower at the ground. I don't know how that shell is going. I don't know if that's a bug or what, but aiming at the ground, I'm not aiming at the soldiers themselves. That's going to be a lot more effective at detonating. Now, this enemy team is just getting, fortunately, kind of destroyed. Those are the basics, guys. So now let's go over and let's start talking about dealing with enemy tanks. So guys, when we're in tank versus tank combat, there are 4 things that we want to be aiming for when we're shooting. For one, we want to be shooting for the ammo, because with the ammo of the enemy tank, it's going to go up in smoke. It's going to explode because ammo explodes when you shoot it. Number 2 is fuel. If you hit the fuel, then it's either going to explode or it's going to catch on fire, which is then going to make the tank explode. So you can see a recurring theme here. You want the other tank to explode, and shooting the things that explode in the enemy tank is how we make it explode. Pretty simple stuff here. Number 3 is the crew, because if they don't have a crew, they don't really have a tank to begin with. It's just a giant hunk of metal. And number 4, basically anything else. The engine is great, because if you knock out the engine, you can flank around and get better shots. If you knock out the transmission, they can't move, same thing. If you knock out the tracks, again, can't move. Anything that can kind of cripple the tank and make it unable to move, or shoot back even better. Those are all great. Those are fantastic things to do, but they're not going to actually detonate the tank itself, so they're not quite as good. Much better to blow up the tank than it is to cripple the tank, because a crippled tank can be repaired. A blown up tank obviously cannot. Now, when you are shooting, you want to make sure that your reticule is green, because that means you will penetrate. So aim where you need to aim, and I will explain how to find those ammo reserves and things like that in a second here. But when you're aiming at the tank, make sure the reticule that you have is green, because if it's not green, you're not going to penetrate, right? So green means you'll penetrate, yellow means you have a low chance of penetrating, and red means you will not, and gray just means either you'll penetrate but it won't do anything, or you're not aiming at anything. So keep that in mind. And finally, the way that you can find out where the ammo is either through A, trial and error, or B, by going over to Gaijin's other game, which is called War Thunder, if you guys don't know. And you can actually look at the X-ray models in War Thunder to get a good idea of where to shoot in Enlisted, because the Enlisted tanks and vehicles are actually ripped straight out of War Thunder for the most part. It's not one-to-one, but it does give a decent idea of where to shoot. So we're going to head over to War Thunder, and I'm going to show you guys the M5A1 Stuart versus the Puma for the Germans, and trying to see where to shoot with both of those. All right, guys, here we are over in War Thunder. Now, this is probably what you're going to see whenever you load in. And we're going to go over to Germany. We're going to find the Puma. It's this one right here. We're going to click preview. And we're going to be able to see all of its stats. You're going to see its 50mm gun. These stats are basically the same as they are in Enlisted. It's not one-to-one. They changed a little bit. But really, we don't really care about any of this. Really, what we care about is the armor. So you can see where it's most armored. Yellow to red is more armor. Green is less. And most importantly, the X-ray. If we look at the X-ray here, we can see that the Puma's ammo right here, and they've got a little ammo cache underneath as well. So these are really what you want to be aiming for, is these two right here on either side. And you can kind of see that if you were to fire a shot right through the center here, you're not going to do anything. You're going to knock out some crew maybe, but it's not going to be amazing, right? Some crew's great. Like maybe you put a shot here and then try to flank around. But really, if you want to be blowing this tank up, you want to be trying to put shots right here. This is where you want to put the shots. So we can even go and test it by going to the protection analysis. It's a really cool tool that War Thunder has that works pretty well to see where you should shoot. So right here, where I was saying, fire a shell from the Stuart. We selected the Stuart here, and we can see, so we get some good damage here. We're not blowing anything up, but you know, we're doing some damage. There we go. That would have detonated the ammo, and then the tank would have gone up in smoke. So you can just use this as a good tool to see where you should shoot, how you should shoot, and the kind of layout of the tanks, because this is the exact layout that it is in Enlisted. So again, for the Puma, right here on the side and right underneath. Now let's take a quick look at the Stuart. M5A1, we're going to go to preview. Again, armor, you can see it's most heavily armored, of course, in the front. This is again why I was talking about how you want to have the slanted armor, because that will make you, I'm sorry, you want to angle your armor, because it'll make shells bounce more often. I can show that in a second. But you can see, obviously, the turrets are normally really well armored, and this front is really well armored as well. We go to the X-ray. The ammo for the Stuart is all in the back here, and then there's some underneath the gunner, and right in between the gunner and the commander as well. So if you're in the Puma, you want to be shooting right around here. You can also hit the fuel right here. Right around there is probably the best spot. So we're going to go protection analysis, and we're going to go to Germany, and we're going to pull up the Puma. We can see if we put a shell right here, it's going to go right through. It's going to blow up, and it's going to detonate this fuel tank. You can also put one right here. Great shot right above the tracks. It's going to go through. It's going to explode. It's going to blow up this ammo, and the tank's going to go up in smoke. And like I was talking about before, if you angle your armor, so say that the Stuart is coming at us like this, you can see these shots are much, much worse, right? Like these angles are just, it's not going to penetrate. It's going to bounce right off, right? Or it's going to explode and shoot out. That's not what you want, right? It doesn't really matter for this side, but you know, maybe some of these are a little bit, you know, the angle's a little bit worse, but it matters for shooting if they're shooting your side armor, right? Because look how much worse this all is, as opposed to being head on. So angling your armor is very, very important in tank versus tank combat, guys. And remember, most of the vehicles in Enlisted, if not all of them, are in War Thunder. So if you ever wanted to go check out the X-ray, War Thunder is a great tool that you can go use to check out where you should be shooting these tanks, just to figure it out. And I've definitely done so. Tanks in the game. So let's go back to Enlisted and let's talk about fighting infantry with tanks. So guys, when we're engaging infantry with tanks, there are two main ways that we can kill the infantry. There is number one, the most effective, which is the machine guns. And number two, less effective, depending on the tank, is the main cannon with HE loaded. So with the Stuart, because it's such a tiny little baby cannon, you don't want to be using this with HE. In fact, I recommend you never load HE ever in the Stuart. I always recommend just using your machine gun, suppressing the enemy. You're not going to get a lot of kills. It's not going to be, you know, a lot of glory, but you're going to be getting kills. You're going to be at least getting some. You're going to be suppressing the enemy. You're going to be damaging them, and your team will be able to mop up. And if you get both guns, like you pop out the top, you will be able to get a lot of kills. The 30 cal will be able to rip them apart with both of them firing. So with the Stuart, really, you just want to be using your machine gun to suppress enemy infantry and ignore the cannon. Use the cannon against Pumas. You can fire HE into like buildings and stuff, because that'll be fairly effective. But for the most part, the HE of the Stuart is like farting at the enemy. It's little puffs of smoke. It doesn't do anything. With the Sherman, the Scott, and most of the German tanks as well, you have much bigger cannons, so you can rely on your cannon a lot more for HE, especially firing into buildings, bunkers, groups of enemies, things like that. Great shots. Remember, like I said before, always try to get the shot as perpendicular as possible with the angle, so then the HE explodes right next to the infantry. You don't want to be shooting the infantry themselves with it, unless you want to see them get blasted to pieces, which, to be fair, is pretty fun. And again, rely on your machine guns for mowing down most infantry. As you saw in those clips earlier when I was talking about the basics, I was using my machine gun more than I was using my cannon, because the machine gun is going to be able to do more damage, especially on the American tanks, where the machine guns take a lot longer to overheat and they cool off much, much faster. With the German tanks, you're probably better off still using the machine gun, although it does overheat much faster. But don't be afraid to use the main cannon with the German tanks. You're gonna have to use it a lot more with the German tanks, because again, you only have this one machine gun and it overheats much, much faster. So with the German tanks, you're gonna have to rely more on your cannon. But when you're fighting infantry, guys, again, like I was talking about before, keep your distance away from them. Don't let infantry get close to you, and be aware of where you're moving, because an infantry coming out of a building, or a soldier coming out of the buildings and having an explosive pack, he's going to throw it at you and you're going to die, because good players know to cook explosive packs and it's impossible to dodge them in tanks. So you need to be really aware of where you're at. Stay in open ground where you can just spray with your machine gun or fire HE into buildings from a distance. When you're moving through a like city or something like that, keep moving. A tank that stays still whenever it's in close quarters areas is a dead tank. So always keep yourself moving, because infantry, while they don't have a lot of tools to deal with you, the tools they do have are very, very effective. Well, guys, that is it for me. Hopefully you learned something from this tank video. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the best tanker out there, because I'm definitely not. But even still, I've seen so many questions asked, in my Twitch chat, on Reddit, in Discord, all over the place, of just how do I tank? I feel like I always crash my tanks. I get them stuck in trenches. I just can't figure out how best to tank. I never feel effective. Things like that. And I just wanted to get a video out there to hopefully give people the bare basics of tanking and give them kind of a foundation to build off of. So hopefully that video, or this video, did that for you guys. And maybe down below you guys can comment, some of your tips and tricks for tanking, how better to tank, or, say some things that I missed, or ask some questions that I might have missed in this video, and I'll be happy to answer them. But thank you guys again for watching the video. Please remember to like the video if you did, and please also remember to subscribe to the channel for more Enlisted content. Thanks, guys.